Hi, friends. Welcome back. I'm Joe with Joe Talks, and we have another really exciting discussion today. Today, I'm joined by my really good friend David Brown, who is in the Air Force. And first of all, sir, thank you so much for welcoming me into your gorgeous backyard. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Thank you very much. So, David, I wanted today to be a discussion about your military background. I
Okay.
understand that, as with all career choices, there are always different paths and walks of life that we can all take. So, would you be able to share with us what brought you to the military?
Absolutely. So, full disclosure, I joined the Air Force when I was 18, and initially it was a result of not having any options,
Okay.
not knowing what I was going to do. So, I joined the Air Force. I was 18, shipped off to Lackland, did basic training. Um, Long story short, what I went into for purposes of just trying to find a way to support myself became something that really molded me and made me the man I am today. So I am so grateful. I think what I've put into the military versus what I've gotten out is just, there's no balance whatsoever. I've definitely benefited the most.
Sure. So, let me ask this question then. A lot of times, I've met a lot of individuals who've been in the military. I've also met a lot of individuals who chose not to join the military. Did you ever have this back and forth? I know you said that it was the only option you had, or something along those terms.
Yeah.
But uh, how would you characterize that whole? Did you have a struggle when you were looking at joining?
You know, it's funny that you say that. I did. Initially, my struggle was at that time, I was a good friend of mine was a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
And he was very dogmatic, for lack of a better term. And so I had come to believe through that friendship that somehow joining the military would make me a part of the Antichrist. I
Oh,
actually believed that. I
interesting.
struggled with that when I was 18. So I had actually gotten to the point where I'd gone to the recruiter, I'd signed on a dotted line, delayed entry. I had a date to go to basic training, which was about 6 months out. I actually called my recruiter and told him because of my beliefs I wasn't going to be able to go. No idea, ignorant, right? Teenager, thinking that the contract would just somehow dissolve and I would be fine.
Uh huh.
Again, long story short, obviously I got over that. I did join, I went to basic training, but that was really my only struggle initially, was that first part.
Interesting. So, when that struggle, would you consider yourself at the time a conscientious dissenter, or?
I don't know that I was a conscientious objector. I just felt that I was pretty naive, ignorant, but sincere about what I believed. And at the time, it made sense to me based on some of the things we had talked about, and my friend and his parents actually proselytizing to me. I wasn't an accepted Jehovah Witness. Never actually got indoctrinated into that belief system other than that. But yeah, I struggled with that for quite some time.
Okay.
And it actually took my leaving my home, joining the military, being away from home, and getting indoctrinated into that system that made me realize it just didn't make a lot of sense. It
I
didn't
see.
hold water. So, no offense to anybody's belief system. It's just that I came to believe that that wasn't the case.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So, did you have any support from your friends and family when you were looking at that, or I mean, what did the people around you feel about you joining the military?
I think for the most part, I got pretty positive responses, especially after, say, the first year or two. You know, you go to basic training, then you go to tech school for whatever particular job you've either chosen or you've been thrown into. And it was about a year before I went home, and I couldn't tell because I'd always been around me, but going back, the feedback I got is how much I had matured and how different I was, and that had to be a direct result of what we call in the military. Um, it sounds like a pejorative term, but it actually, in basic training, they strip away everything that's not useful in terms of behaviors, habits, teach you how to be a part of a team. And I think those things being instilled in me really helped me again to become the person that I am now and the person that I became after I left home.
Okay. So let's jump directly into your military career then.
Sure.
what did you start off in? So
Oh
in the Air Force,
gosh.
I know they have Air Force Specialty Codes, AFSCs. What did
Yes.
you start off as in the Air
I
Force?
started out in services. I take that back. I actually started out in basic training. My AFSC was jet engine mechanic.
Interesting.
It's actually jet engine mechanic. And again, being young, being ignorant, I had no idea of what that entailed. But I'd heard so many horror stories about working out on the flight line and the weather and extreme conditions, um, that it really scared me. Now, I'm not proud of this, but I'm going to tell you something that changed me, because the person I went in as was not the person I came out as. I had very little integrity, very little, even less character. And so I found out one of the things that I could do is, in the military you have to qualify on the M16 in order to continue through basic training. I was told that if I didn't qualify, I would be reclassed. What I didn't know at the time is that you could also be separated. So I took a big chance because I was afraid. I intentionally didn't qualify in the 16. They reclassed me into a different AFSC, which happened to be services.
Oh wow.
Food services, hotel services, things of that nature.
Do you regret not qualifying on the M16 then?
Yes and no. Yes, because obviously, first and foremost, it was an integrity issue, right? I did something that was selfish. I did something that I thought would benefit me with no thought to anything bigger than myself. So I regret it for that reason. I regret it because at the time, once I found out what services was, it wasn't the most glamorous job. It wasn't one of those jobs necessarily that you're lauded for being in the military. But even that taught me some things about who I am, about character, about responsibility, about being the best that you can be and doing the best at whatever that task or job is. So in retrospect, I don't regret it now. When I was younger, less obviously wise, maybe, if you will, I did. But as I look back on it now, absolutely not.
You'd mentioned being the best you can be, and you mentioned other character attributes.
Yeah.
A lot of times people characterize members of the military to have strong honor, strong character traits, and stuff like that. Do you feel that you gained some of those traits through the military, or
Oh,
do you feel that it was something just inherent to yourself, David?
no, no, I don't credit myself with that. There are two things, and as you know, Joe, I'm a firm believer. I'm a Christian, not to proselytize to anyone, but I believe that there's a God. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Savior. And so, first and foremost, I would say that's the leading factor in terms of who I am as a person and how I behave. Um, I think what the military did for me is it contributed to that with some of the core values that we have, the ethics, the things that we aspire to in terms of how we treat each other. Um, Never leave, a comrade behind. Those types of things, I think, are instilled in an individual as you go through your career. And the military, in some respect, is just like anything else, right? You're going to have people who will come in, they won't assimilate, maybe they won't have the best character attributes or lack integrity. And my hope is that those people are, weeded out at some point. But I think if you're open to being accountable to who you are as a person, your shortcomings, and the things that you do well, I think definitely for a lot of people, it's a way to just better yourself.
I see. I see. What were some of the hardest lessons that you learned while you were in the military?
Oh, I would say the biggest lesson I learned was accountability.
Accountability.
Um, I think, I hate to be pessimistic and generalize, because I haven't met everybody in the world, everybody
Sure.
in the country, or even everybody in my neighborhood. But I think one of the things that we struggle with as a country, as a people, is accountability. Accountability for what we do, accountability for the things that we say in our behavior, and making sure that we interact with people in a way that we'd want to be treated. And I think that's one of the hard lessons I had to learn. I think I was very arrogant, again, naive. I thought I knew it all. You could tell me anything when I was a young airman. And what helped me to make that transition were people who had enough integrity, character, and determination to stick with it in spite of my behavior and my attitude, these folks took me under the wing and they taught me some very valuable and hard lessons. Initially, it was tough for me, but I'm extremely thankful for those interactions.
I see. I see. So it definitely sounds like you picked up a lot of really good traits in the military, and this is while you're still in services.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's an old cliche. There are no small jobs, only small people, right? When you're put in situations where you have to do things that you might consider to be demeaning, when you're put in situations where you have to serve other people beyond your own needs, I think it can do one of two things. It can cause a change in character, or it can in a positive way, or it can cause you to be bitter and resentful. And fortunately for me, like I said, those individuals that I interacted with were consistent, not just in providing those verbal lessons, but displaying that positive behavior. Look, again, there's no small jobs, just small people, and I'm not so important, speaking about supervisors that I've had, that I can't do this with you, that I can't show you how it's done and get in there and do the work just like you if that's necessary, so you see that there's value in this. And it's not about always the job, it's about the person and what you bring to it. So yeah, I definitely, I don't regret any of that looking
Okay.
back on it.
And this is all while you're in services, is that correct?
Absolutely, 4 years of services.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
4 years. So what was next after services?
So after I left services, I went into munitions.
Munitions. Emma. Okay.
Ammo, yep. Ammo is a great job in the military. Not a lot of call for that on the outside. I liked the job, I liked the people. I did that for another 4 years, and I decided to cross-train out of that just because at that point, with 8 years in, I started thinking, okay, obviously I like this. This is something I want to make a career out of, but I need to think beyond just the military as well. I need a marketable skill, something I can do when I retire.
Understood. Understood. So I also want to talk about what you are currently doing
Mhm.
in the Air Force. I understand you're in the Honor Guard.
That's correct.
Is that okay? So for our audience who have never been in the military or who might not be familiar with the military, can you enlighten us on what one the Honor Guard is,
Yeah.
and two what you do in the Honor Guard?
Yeah, and there's so much, so I'll try and keep it brief and explain as best I can what the Honor Guard is. So for the Air Force, Headquarters Command in 1948 established the Honor Guard, and the purpose of it was to give military funeral honors for veterans, retirees, and individuals that have served in the military, specifically the Air Force. I can tell you it is one of the most gratifying and humbling things I've ever done in my life. I've done services for people who have served in Korea, World War II, prisoners of war, and we're out, those folks, those men and women that are trained in that field, we're out doing what we've been trained to do. We're doing our job. And the fact that the family members are so just honored and grateful for what we do. So let me back up a little bit and explain what it is. Military funeral honors will typically consist of, depending on the status of the individual that's passed, a veteran or a retiree, a two-person detail, as many as three playing taps, one individual, a flagfold, or a six-person detail. Six-person detail is basically reserved for retirees. And so basically what happens is the flag is folded for the next of kin. That can be the spouse, it can be a son, it can be a daughter, whomever is considered the next of kin. Flag fold ceremony is done, taps is played, and at the end of the ceremony, the flag is given to the next of kin with a speech thanking them for their family member's service on behalf of the Air Force and the President. And I will tell you, sometimes just giving that speech, it takes more than just dedication. It takes a certain type of person to do it because, again, it's emotional. It's a very emotional process to think about that these individuals have given their lives. They've served for our country honorably, and they've died either in combat as POWs or just retired or as veterans. So the goal is, the Air Force has specifically established that every member of the Air Force who is a veteran or a retiree is entitled to military honors once they pass on. They make it a very simple process. Basically, the next of kin just needs to provide what's called a DD Form 214 to the honor guard, and the service is scheduled, and it's as simple as that. And I will tell you, there are parameters that we have, but the goal is to honor that member. There are certain things that we have to do in accordance with the regulations, and there are certain things that we will do simply because this is what the family wants. And again, one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. Easy.
Wow. It definitely sounds like that there's a lot of reverence for the honor guard.
Yes, yes. It's there are standards, and to differentiate, there's what's called the base honor guard and then the Air Force honor guard. If you've ever seen a military funeral on television for such individuals as like the President of the United States, other DoD important individuals or military people, you have an idea of what the honor guard does. Base honor guard basically works within the local community. They have a region, rather.
Okay.
They work within that region, and they will do military honors again for all veterans and retirees within that region for that specific base.
I see. I see. Okay. So, have you ever thought to yourself, as you're going through the ceremony, being a member of the honor guard, have you ever wondered about the stories of the people present? Have you ever wondered about what happened to these individuals? What brought them to where they are now?
Yeah.
Because just speaking from my own perspective, in my day-to-day work, and every person that I walk by, and I don't think about this every single time, but I do wonder, the person who's next to me, standing at the cash register, the person I'm driving by, what's their story?
Yeah.
What makes them who they are? And for me, that is an experience for me to self-reflect and say, well, wherever they've been, wherever they've gone, am I on the right path?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of self-reflection, just from my perspective, and I don't mean to take that away from anything that the honor guard does.
Oh,
and
sure.
I definitely understand. I've been to a few ceremonies where the honor guard were present, and there's a lot of respect for in the entire crowd. There is so much respect and reverence to what the military represents, what the honor guard is there to represent. So I throw the question back to you, David. Do you ever wonder about people's stories?
Yeah, the fortunate part, it's just, I think, one of the benefits of having the privilege of doing these services for former military members is that oftentimes we do get to hear those stories. I can regale you with stories from individuals who were prisoners of war, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. One of the things that I didn't mention is that there's also what's called an all-volunteer service of veterans who come out, and they will do services, military honors for members as well, at the request of the family.
Wow.
More so than not, these are individuals, again, who have served in previous conflicts from Korea to Vietnam, you name it. And one of the things that we do is prior to the service, we're usually there about an hour before the actual procession gets there. And so if what we call all vets are there, we get a chance to just talk to them, and they'll tell us their stories. And I will tell you, it's humbling. We wear the uniform, and those of us that do it, it's a choice. You don't do it for honor. You certainly don't do it for fame or money. You do it because you believe in something that's bigger than yourself. And so that in and of itself is an honor. But to get to work with and talk to these individuals who have served before you, they've laid the foundation. These are the folks who have set the path that we're on, and our service is a direct result of what they've done. And so it's humbling, it's inspiring, and again, so many stories that I've had the privilege of hearing from these veterans.
Would you be so kind as to share one of those stories with us?
Yeah, so I want to be mindful and respectful
Of course.
of people's personal information.
Of course.
I do remember one particular story, and I won't use names, but the individual, I believe, was a P-51 pilot, if I'm not mistaken. And so prior to being called up, he was engaged, and he made a promise to his fiancée. His fiancée was actually there. They didn't get married, by the way. She was considered the next of kin at the service, but she got the flag and they didn't get married, but she was the next of kin. He made a promise to her that he was going off to fight for his country and to do the right thing, the honorable thing, and she didn't want him to go. And he expressed to her that it wasn't as if he had an option. This is a generation of people who felt like this is just what you do. This is what he felt like he had to do. Long story short, while he was engaged in the conflict, they kept in touch by writing letters, and at some point she said it just stopped. She never heard anything. Typically, during that time, if someone was killed in action, the War Department was pretty good about notifying those individuals, their next of kin rather, by sending military members, usually in a staff car, to let them know. For whatever reason, that individual had just fallen off the radar. And so she didn't find out until, I think it was mentioned to me when we spoke. She had said it was about 3 years later.
Wow.
She assumed that he was killed in combat. She didn't find out till 3 years later. She got no benefits of being his spouse. She got no recognition other than what his family, his sons, 2 sons and a daughter, were from a previous relationship, were willing to do. They were willing to let her be considered the next of kin because of their relationship. And it's just heartbreaking. Stories like that, when you think about the sacrifices that people have made in the past so we can enjoy the freedoms that we have. Yeah, it's extremely humbling, and it gets to you from time to time.
So let me ask you this question then, David. You've mentioned it's an emotionally strong position to be in.
Yeah.
You have to be emotionally strong, and you have to have the mental fortitude to be able to do something like this.
Yes.
What compelled you to join the Honor Guard, and what brought you to that particular line in the Air Force?
It's funny, and again, total full disclosure, right?
Okay.
I initially applied for the Honor Guard position because I wanted to continue to work. I wanted to do something different. I wasn't so much at the time that knowledgeable about what the Honor Guard was. It was, once I got into it, I was accepted into the position, and I started doing the training, and I went out and did my first service, that the realization of what it was hit me. So I wish I could sit here and tell you, I've always known about veterans and those that have passed and the honors that they've received. That's simply not the case. It happened for me by being exposed to it. I was fortunate enough to interview well, I got the position, and then I went out and did the job. And I realized, wow, these are people who deserve every single platitude and honor that they're getting because they have literally given their lives for their country. Some gave, in body parts or mental health, but the ultimate sacrifice is to be willing to lay down your life for your country. That's huge, regardless of your politics. And so that hit me as I started to go out and interact and do these services with other veterans and, again, people who were from the all vets.
Right.
Just talking and being exposed to them and some of the things that they've sacrificed willingly for their country. It's humbling. And the only thing you can try to do is honor their service by making sure that your service is honorable. What I do is honorable. That the impression that I'm leaving on people, the legacy that I leave is hopefully one of honor and sacrifice and willingness to put something bigger than myself ahead of my own desires. So
it's very interesting you mentioned that, leaving a legacy of honor.
Yeah.
A lot of the individuals that I know who have served in the military, or even those not in the military, I don't know if I would go as far as to say it's human nature, but it can be self-serving at times.
Oh, sure.
There's no secret. Being in the military comes with its benefits.
Yes.
You have tuition assistance. You have the VA loan process for mortgages.
Yeah.
You have, for all intents and purposes, a steady income.
Yes, free medical.
Free medical, absolutely. Yeah. And for those with the 20 years worth of retirement, not even going to talk about the blended plan, but for those with that, they have excellent retirement benefits.
Yes.
And to hear you say you would like to leave a legacy of honor,
Yeah.
would you consider yourself a minority within the military with that mindset?
Oh gosh, no, no. So yeah. Let's be real. There are benefits to service. Absolutely. There are things that in the civilian sector you just won't find that we get in the military. However, when you compare and contrast to what you're signing up for, every single person who wears the uniform knows that at any given time you could be called to
Absolutely.
sacrifice. And you do that willingly. Don't get me wrong, this isn't sort of a false heroism. Um, in situations where I know I've put myself in danger, I'm afraid. But it's not about, oh, I'm not, fearful. I'm not worried about anything can happen. In spite of those things, we do what we've made a commitment. We follow up on that commitment. We hold to that commitment. And I think for the most part, the majority of individuals who serve do so willingly, knowing that at one point or another, possibly more than once, you may be called up to put, yourself in harm's way.
Sure. So let me ask. I don't think I've ever asked you this, David. You were never combat arms, were you?
No, no,
Okay.
not Captain.
Okay. So you were started off in services,
Mm-hmm.
and then you reclassed to ammo, effectively.
Correct.
And at what point in your career did you make the transition to honor guard? I mean, were you active duty? You were active duty at one point in time, yes?
No, actually not. So we only covered a few of the AFSCs that I've been into.
Okay.
Personnel,
Walk me through that.
personnel, services, ammo. I am currently, my AFSC is medical.
Medical.
And so there is what's called a SURF-P team here in the state of Colorado. It's the CBRNE, which is chemical, biological, radionuclear. You know about that.
Yes.
It's an emergency response force package. So that team responds to both local and possibly national disasters, depending on if the request comes in from another state.
Right.
And so that's what my AFSC is currently. The protocol is what you would consider a special duty.
Okay.
And so that'll probably be for 2 years. The honor guard is also considered a special duty. So I applied for the honor guard position, when was that? In 2015, I believe, February of 2015. And typically, if the funding and the days are available, it's a 3-year tour.
Understood.
So that's what I've been doing actually since February of this year. Because we are guardsmen, those of us that go to the Honor Guard at Buckley Air Force Base, we can only do 3 years before we run into what's called the 1095 rule.
Okay.
Have to take a year break, and then you can go back and do orders again, what we call active duty orders. That's the plan currently, and more than likely that's what I'll go back to
Okay.
in the next fiscal year, which starts in October.
Understood. You've described many, from what I understand, many different roles
Yeah.
within honor guard.
Yeah.
What role specifically do you play?
So, again, I was fortunate where I've had many different roles in the Honor Guard. The primary position of most Honor Guardsmen is just that. You are a guardsman. You are a ceremonial guardsman. And so your job is to function at those services where we're providing military honors. And let me just say some of the benefits. It isn't all as dreary as it might sound. Some of the benefits here in Colorado is that the Honor Guard does most of the football games here for the state team. So the Broncos, you'll see Honor Guardsmen there at every single team, and they're here from Buckley Air Force Base. We do Rockies games and things of that nature. For promotion ceremonies, retirements, things of that nature, we'll post the colors, present and post the colors. So there are a lot of different opportunities that they get to go out and be in the community and show that military pride in both civilian and military ceremonies. But within the Honor Guard, again, the primary function is that of a ceremonial guardsman, and there are different positions within the Honor Guard. And at base Honor Guard level, you're trained on every single position. So, and let me just differentiate real quick because it's important to note. For those of you for individuals that know about the Honor Guard, again, you have the Honor Guard that's the Air Force Honor Guard, which you mostly see in DC. Then you have the base honor guard. When you're honor guard at the Air Force level, you typically get trained, let's say, if you see someone with a rifle, that is primarily all they do. That's what they do. If you see someone carrying a casket, that is mostly what they do. They carry caskets and they are specifically trained on that, and that's what they'll do. At the base level, you have to be trained on weapons. You have to be trained to carry a casket. You have to be trained to fold a flag. You have to be able to lead a team. You have to be able to be a part of a six-person team as well and function in any one of those roles. So there's a myriad of different things that a base honor guardsman has to learn and be very good at, proficient, not just proficient, but very good at in a short amount of time. So there's quite a bit.
So you mentioned you have to be proficient in various attributes
Yes.
of honor guard. I think you're good enough, so good in your job actually, that you were recently recognized. Is that correct?
That's true. I was hoping you wouldn't say that, but that's okay. That's okay. So, yeah, I was put in for a guard level award, which is Honor Guardsman of the Year. So what they do is they choose individuals throughout the 54 states and territory, and both myself and my at the time supervisor were chosen for two specific positions, or I'm sorry, awards. One was Program Manager of the Year, which the flight chief won for that, and I won Honor Guardsman of the Year.
Fantastic.
And so, the program manager basically runs the program. He is also a ceremonial guardsman, and he can go out and perform in any of those duties, funeral honors, but primarily he manages the program.
Okay.
So,
Very good. Well, we've discussed various attributes of your particular military career.
yeah.
Do you have any recommendations or advice or life hacks, if you will,
Yeah.
that you feel would be important to pass on to junior members of the military, or anything applicable to others who don't serve in the military?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I mentioned that has really become important to me in my life is personal accountability. I think sometimes, we live in a fast-paced society, right? And especially in this country, oftentimes everything is instant gratification. We want it right now, we want it 10 minutes ago. And we get so caught up in our own desires and needs and things that we have to do that we forget there are other people, there's a world, there are people with needs. I think if we can just take that, and it's not to denigrate, it's not to say that, I'm not beating up on people
Sure.
or telling people you need to do better. I'm simply saying that I think we need to just step back from time to time. We need to take accountability for the individual that we want to be and the person that we actually are, and be able to look at those objectively as much as possible and say, you know what, I'm really great in this area. Most of us have an easy time doing that. But here's some areas I could probably improve in.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some things I can work on. And I'm not so much talking about skill sets. I'm talking about just being a better human being, being a better citizen, being aware and sensitive to the fact that there are things going on in the world that are affecting other people. And regardless of our situation, most of us, I think, are pretty blessed. I don't know a lot of people who don't have a roof over their head, who don't have transportation to get back and forth to wherever they need to get to. And we have our own individual struggles, definitely. I'm not discounting that. But I think personal accountability hopefully just allows us to take a step back and realize, yes, I have some struggles, maybe I have some opportunities, but there are so many things out in the world that are so much bigger. How can I contribute to that? Whatever it is. How can I make the world a better place? And it doesn't have to be anything grandiose.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just a smile. Maybe it's just a thank you. Maybe it's just letting somebody in traffic. We know we could use that on 25 here in Colorado.
I will definitely say at times I have been guilty of not being as
here.
forgiving, if you will.
Yes.
But it is definitely humbling to speak to members of the military, such as yourself, who've been in honor guard. You see people at their best, and you see people at their worst.
Yeah.
You see tears, you see joy.
Yeah.
And it's really insightful to hear that there's another tomorrow.
Exactly.
And effectively, our lives are in our own hands.
Yep.
We make our own futures. Yep. And for those who have served in the military honorably, they have one day the distinct honor to be able to be served by members like yourselves,
Absolutely.
and that honor extends not just to the service member. So
Absolutely.
it is so interesting to see how the military can transcend into the military belief system, if you will, can transcend into what we have on the civilian sector. So you'd mentioned that you're in the Guard and the Reserve.
Hmm.
What what translation do you have to go from the honor guard to that of the civilian side? And this is the last thing I wanted to ask, but
Sure.
you mentioned you wanted to find something that is translatable
Hmm.
into the civilian sector.
Right.
What what is that translation, David?
So I think you may have noticed in the past, let's say 10 years, conservatively, that the civilian sector has really focused, I believe, more on hiring veterans, hire a vet. I think there are a lot of specific reasons for that, and apart from the skill sets, the specialized skill sets that veterans tend to get in their training, I think it's about, a lot of it has to do with character and integrity and values. And I think most people understand and know that if you've served any considerable amount of time in the military, you've assimilated to those things. Um, I can't think of too many things. There are things that have happened in the military that I may not care for, that I may not like, but that's with anything. That's going to happen.
Exactly.
I think that the military focuses very heavily on not just professional development, but personal development, trying to ensure that if you're in a position of leadership, you're doing the right things for your subordinates, that you have the skill sets that you need to translate and to communicate and to make sure that you're supporting those people that work with you in a subordinate position. So I think primarily for me what stands out is it's the character piece. It's the integrity. There are so many fail-safes that constantly remind you of those things. And it's not to say that we don't have failures. Things happen. You read about it in the paper.
As with all organizations.
Exactly. But I think for the most part, the military does a really good job of focusing on the values, the core values. For us in the Air Force, it's in integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. What more do you need? I mean, that pretty much sums up everything that as a human being you should probably strive for.
Understood. Understood. David, this has been such an honor to speak with you, sir.
Oh, you as well, Joe.
I hope you all out there watching. I think this is something we can all take away from. I mean, you literally lead a job that is duty and honor centric. So it has been such an honor to speak with you, sir. I really appreciate the time, and again, thank you so much for welcoming me into your home.
I appreciate the venue.
Yeah, I would love an opportunity in the future to speak more, and perhaps even have you come on as a regular contributor. So.
Oh, absolutely. That would be great.
Thank you so much. This
Thanks
has been
for
great.
doing the podcast, man. I think
Absolutely.
this is awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to follow us on Joe Talks on my YouTube channel for more educational and inspiring life hacks. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
Nice. That was awesome.
Yeah. I'm